Hi everyone, my name is Hurcombe. Today, I'll be presenting research that me and my colleagues Axel Bruns and Stephen Harrington have done on how news outlets have covered COVID-19 conspiracy theories. More specifically, we'll be examining the coverage of the COVID-19/5G conspiracy theory, one of the most significant conspiracies that gained mainstream attention during the early months of the pandemic. So, just a bit of background. As COVID went global early last year, conspiracy theories about the real origins of the pandemic spread online, leading the WHO to declare the spread of such misinformation an infodemic that paralleled the virus itself. One theory especially gained traction during this time: the entirely unfounded claim that 5G mobile towers were worsening or even causing the spread of the coronavirus. This theory gained so much attention that by April 2020, 5G towers are being set alight in a number of European countries. Unsurprisingly, fringe actors and conspiracy outlets played an early role in disseminating the COVID 5G conspiracy on platforms. But we know that mainstream media outlets can also amplify conspiracies and conspiracists. And during early 2020, many outlets took a sensationalistic approach to reporting on the conspiracy, and thereby greatly increasing the visibility of the bogus 5G conspiracy beyond fringe spaces. Covering conspiracies therefore presents difficult choices for news outlets, as it can make mis and disinformation much more visible to much larger and diverse audiences. And even when the coverage is negative, it can also harden conspiracist views by confirming their suspicions of mainstream sources. In the rest of this presentation, I'll illustrate these dilemmas and examine the editorial choices made by diverse mainstream and fringe outlets during these early months of the COVID 5G conspiracy. Through this research, me and my colleagues drew on article data from the global news database GDELT. We focused on articles that reference the pandemic and 5G together in their headlines or URLs. We chose our timeframe as beginning in early February, just as the global pandemic was starting, to early April, soon after the 5G mobile tower attacks. After removing false positives and broken links, we were left with a dataset of almost 1,900 fringe and mainstream news articles. This dataset was then manually coded according to a range of criteria, including country of origin, type of news site, central theme of the article, treatment of the conspiracy, and the kinds of sources cited. And here's our timeline. So this timeline shows the number of articles produced per day that mention COVID-19 and 5G. As you can see, articles containing those keywords really started to pick up in late March and early April, peaking around the time of the 5G tower attacks. In light of this, we've divided this timeframe into 3 distinct periods, which I'll run through now. So the first phase ran from the 1st of January to the 15th of March and was largely dominated by fringe US-based outlets that promoted the conspiracy theory. Otherwise, most articles during this phase were fact checks from specialist technology and business news sites. And so phase 2 covers the period from 16th to the 31st of March. And it was really during this time that we saw a substantial shift in the tone and focus of news coverage. In particular, there was a significant growth in coverage of the conspiracy from entertainment and lifestyle outlets, music and celebrity news sites in particular. This was due to a number of high-profile endorsements of the conspiracy from celebrities. Most notably here is the US singer Keri Hilson, who endorsed the conspiracy on Twitter. We found that more than half the articles in our dataset during this phase that covered Hilson's social media posts directly quoted Hilson and other conspiracists. We also know from our other research that this coverage of Hilson's posts had a wide circulation on Facebook, beyond the very limited reach of the conspiracist sites from phase 1. At the same time, there was also a growth in fact-checking articles. Still, we can already see some critical questions emerging about if and how to report on conspiracist celebrities. Lastly, it is in phase 3, covering the period of early April, that sees the most activity. The vast majority of our dataset lies in this period, nearly all of it coverage of the attacks on 5G towers in the UK and elsewhere. Alongside the coverage of the attacks were a lot of articles covering official responses to those attacks. And notably, most of this coverage was from mainstream and local news outlets. And in contrast to earlier phases, there was a significant reduction in direct quotation of conspiracists. which all leads us to some key takeaways. Firstly, our dataset suggested the immediate impact of conspiracist sites was limited. Conspiracist sites may have played a role in seeding the 5G conspiracy, but it was not until celebrities began endorsing the conspiracy in mid-March that it started gaining significant attention from news outlets and on social media. Due to this, our dataset indicates that celebrities can become super spreaders of misinformation, and therefore soft news beats like entertainment and lifestyle journalism can have a major responsibility to not amplify these conspiracist claims. Our dataset indicates that instead of meeting that responsibility, these soft news beats were actually journalism's weak spot for misinformation. This could be because these beats treated what celebrities do as inherently newsworthy, even more so when celebrity behaviour was sensational. Lastly, some critical questions emerged about when it was the right time to respond to mis and disinformation. Official responses from governments and fact checks from journalists became much more frequent in mid-April, but this was already too late to prevent arson attacks. And yet, earlier responses in February and March may have also amplified conspiracies at an earlier period. So in this paper, we could only speculate about decisions and decision-making. Further research would therefore be really valuable in retracing decision-making processes during early 2020, and ideally would include interviews with journalists, editors, and spokespeople. Thank you for your time.